I know sometimes things can look grim out there, but trust me, don't worry. It can always get better. I'm talking, of course, about the waiver wire. Looks like there's nothing left, right? It's been combed over, picked over. Like all the good players are gone. I get it. Who do you pick up? Gotta look ahead. Let's talk about some players who have yet to break out, maybe yet to even do much of anything, but the potential is there, maybe the opportunity is there. Sometimes you just gotta take a chance. Oh, and there's a chance that you might be able to get a top 5 overall fantasy score from last year for free on the waiver wire. But the theme here this week, starting out, is fresh starts. First start number 1, AD Mitchell. All right, so you know that he is now a Jet. And I mean, this was a smart move by them. Of course, getting those draft picks is what they really wanted in exchange for Sauce Gardner and every other player they traded. But they kind of insisted that Mitchell be thrown in. And the Colts were like, sure, why not? I mean, look, we're not going to use him anyways. And they really weren't. Look, AD Mitchell, his one big play, his highlight for this season is also his low light. Turned out to be his worst play. Of course, you know what I mean. That long touchdown that wasn't a touchdown because he decided to drop the ball right before the goal line. This isn't the reason he got traded, but I think it was a reason. You can't just ignore it. This was a factor. This was kind of like the last straw throughout his rookie year. Again, he shows flashes of potential, but mental mistakes, right? Just lack of preparedness, all these things. And that kind of carried over. He showed that he was ready, man. This spring, we heard nothing but good things. In the training camp, they were saying he was the best player on the field. Well, he didn't get on the field when the regular season started, and then when he did, he just blew it up. So yeah, the Colts are ready to move on. I'm sure Donnie Mitchell is ready to move on. You're going to go in the Jets? Not the greatest landing spot, not going to lie, but it kind of is the perfect landing spot for a guy like Mitchell because with Garrett Wilson now out again, and they're saying 3 to 4 weeks, they are left with Tyler Johnson and Arian Smith as their top 2 receivers. Really? That doesn't mean that they're just going to throw Mitchell into the fire and all of a sudden make him the top guy. I mean, it's going to take time here. I mean, again, this is all about that potential. I mean, he's definitely the most talented receiver that is healthy right now on the field there. It's just a matter of, do they trust him? Are they going to use him? Why wouldn't you? I mean, why would you insist on getting him in a trade and then not putting him on the field when you got nothing else to play for the rest of the season and Wilson is out? So I do expect we'll see some Mitchell, and look, if he catches on and gets a little bit of chemistry there with Justin Fields, maybe he actually continues to grow into a prominent role. All right, then a familiar name. It's been a couple of times. We talked about Luther Burden there in Chicago. He's teased us a little bit. He had a pretty slow start to the season. It had a big game and then nothing. And then a decent game and then nothing. Last week, another decent game. So what do I expect? Of course, I expect nothing. But maybe there will be something to come here because, DJ Moore is still battling a shoulder issue. He left that game late and he's just been inconsistent as well. I mean, look, it feels like Luther Burden is ready to take over DJ Moore's job anyways. Luther Burden, when he's been on the field, has been super efficient. In fact, shockingly so. If you look at the list of the top 8 wide receivers in terms of yards per route run this season, you have 7 absolute studs, elite wide receivers, and Luther Burden. Yeah, he's 4th on that list of yards per route run. Now, granted, he hasn't run nearly as many routes as those other guys who are number 1 receivers for their good offenses, but this just shows that he is being efficient. To some extent, I know that one really big touchdown play that he had back in week 3 kind of skews it. Look, but still the point is, if this guy actually got more targets, he could be a lot more helpful in fantasy. Last week, his 49% route share was a season high, and partly due to more, being in and out of the lineup. But again, we are going to see, as most rookies do, especially rookie wide receivers, they're going to continue to increase their role as the season goes on. Maybe he will just supplant more, even if more plays. Before we move on to some other positions where you could stash high upside players, quick reminder, if you haven't tried Draft Lane, you still got time to do it while we're just before the playoff season for fantasy. Keep in mind, you got waiver wire questions, some trade questions before your trade deadline is up. Start, sit, anything. Use Draft Lane. It's free to download App Store or the Play Store. And if you use code ENDGAME, you'll get 10 free credits to use towards your first couple of questions. All right, so I promise I was not lying about telling you that you could pick up one of the very top fantasy scorers of all from last season, potentially, because Joe Burrow has been out since the very beginning of the season. not everybody was patient enough to stash him, keep him on IR. You don't have an IR spot. He's only 63% rostered on Yahoo leagues. That means there are a lot of leagues out there you could potentially pick up one of the top quarterbacks in all of fantasy. Of course, every league is different. Go out and check yours to see, if Burrow might be available. And at the very least, if he is rostered still, this might be the time to buy low. If someone else has already moved on, I mean, they've had to have moved on because they haven't had Burrow all season, basically. The reason that you do it now is because they may not know that it was just announced Joe Burrow is activating from IR, ready to practice again, and setting a goal of week 13 to return. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? And even if he does return, of course, there is injury risk, re-injury risk. As always, we got to be careful here. But man, it's Joe Burrow. Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins are still healthy. We've seen what Joe Flacco has done in that offense. If Joe Burrow's out there, I don't even care who your quarterback is. You stash him so somebody else can't. And for what it's worth, the Bengals' playoff schedule is pretty good for fantasy. In week 15 through 17, they get the Ravens, the Dolphins, and the Cardinals. None of those matchups are scary, especially on the defensive end. So, yeah, man, just go check. Just go look right now, look in all your leagues, search Joe Burrow, see if he's available. All right, now it's finally time for some running backs. Let's start with one returning member of this list. We talked about Blake Corum as a stash. He's still always been stash worthy just as a handcuff to Kyren Williams. But as we suspected might have been the case earlier in the season, maybe he's going to be a standalone value kind of player, a guy who's maybe a 1B, not just a distant handcuff. So even though Corum really hasn't been fantasy relevant per se, I mean, of course, not having any big games, but also he hasn't scored since week 2, but that rush share is quietly increasing enough to make Kyren Williams owners a little nervous. Even though Kyren has been fine, he's producing and he's scoring plenty of touchdowns. But yeah, Corum eating away at those carries. He's got double-digit carries in 3 straight games, Corum does, and he's hit 50 yards in each of the last 2. Naturally, there's no takeover happening here, but Corum now, again, more of a 1B here, and so, is not a guy that you really feel is going to be flex-worthy unless Kyren goes down. But if Kyren goes down, yeah, Corum is going to be a must-add everywhere. Don't wait for that to happen. This is now going to be pretty close to being handcuff stashing time. And I'll talk more about those type of players over the next couple of weeks, but Corum seems like a top priority. Now running back completely new to the list, a guy we have not talked about at all, I promise, this entire season, because he's done nothing, hasn't been activated yet, but the Cowboys do technically need a backup running back to Javonte Williams, and it looks like it might pretty soon be Phil Mafah. That's right, Phil Bad Mafah is possibly the RB2 here because Jaden Blue, well, he sure ain't. He was a healthy scratch again this past week. He's apparently back in the doghouse. In fact, Schottenheimer made some pointed comments about how he needs to be better suited for all those little things, pass protection and more preparedness. He's got little shots that basically make it clear he's not thrilled with Blue. And then apparently he's also got some sort of ankle injury. Who knows if that's real or not. The point is, Blue is not the handcuff here. He's not the backup anymore. Malik Davis had been around. Well, after the trade deadline, they had to make some moves. He got released. And so here we go. Now Mafah, who's been hurt all season, he is starting to practice. We might actually see him get some carries. Now, definitely not standalone value for him, but if Javonte goes down, you might be surprised to know that Phil Mafah is the one that you want to own. At tight end here, well, we have a pretty interesting name, a guy who's been much better than anybody realizes, but more so in real life, because if you were doing a lot more in fantasy than Jackson Hawes, being the fact he's in Buffalo, it definitely would be drawing attention. He's going to get attention now because Dalton Kincaid once again is injured, but now what they're saying is that Kincaid might be out indefinitely. Not a very encouraging word here if you got Kincaid, but man, this just means more opportunities for Jackson Hawes, the pretty impressive rookie. How impressive has he been? Okay, so for what it's worth, I know not everybody loves the PFF grading system, but still, if you take into account everything offensively, talk about pass blocking, run blocking, receiving, everything that he's supposed to do, he is a top 5 overall tight end. That's right, he's 4th on that list. Not just ahead of Kincaid, but up there with the elite tight ends. He's been doing it all, and he's been earning a decent amount of snaps. Now we know veteran Dawson Knox is still there, and he's the guy that most people will think, okay, well he's the next up. But man, the way Haas has been playing, he deserves a shot. Maybe they'll start to give him a few more targets. And they've had some other injuries at wide receiver as well too. You know, Josh Palmer has been out of the lineup. They need some help here. Maybe this could be the replacement for Dalton Kincaid. Haas, it does have a couple of touchdowns, including the one he just got last week. Not a lot else, right? Only 8 catches on the season, 113 yards. Nobody will be thinking about Jackson Haas, but maybe he should be. And let's go with one more rookie, guy who has also done very little with opportunities he's had, but also has not gotten enough opportunities. Well, maybe Pat Bryant in Denver should be getting more chances because, man, that offense needs something to spark it. Bryant wasn't one of the earlier wide receivers drafted, but early enough that he should be able to carve out somewhat of a role. You know, Marvin Mims has been out the last couple of weeks. But look, we've seen Bryant now finally start to get on the field a little bit more. Last week, a season high 71% route participation. Been a quiet rookie season so far. He has not topped 2 receptions or even reached 50 yards yet this year, and only has that 1 touchdown. But hey, this Denver offense, again, they need to find something here. It's not a great time to stash Bryant. I'll just say this because they get the Chiefs this week, and then they're on bye. So I almost hesitate to even mention him. But look, coming out of the bye might be a good time to stash a guy like Bryant. And if you've got the room, if you're in a deep enough league, just do it now. All right, guys, you're watching here. You know the key to success isn't just looking at the here now. Got to plan for the future. Let's do that with some smart stashes. And if you do want help from the here and now and setting your lineup for week 11 or anything else that you need help with, it's right here.